I was born in a country still echoing the footsteps of a fallen regime, a land marked by silence, survival, and unspoken wounds. My name is Tõnis, and this is not just my story. It's a glimpse into a generation raised under the shadow of the Iron Curtain and the harsh realities of the ongoing aftermath. This is the first step of a journey through trauma, resilience, and what it means to live on a leash.
Laying the foundation.
I was born on a small patch of earthland someone had decided to call Estonia. Our country was fresh out of a 50-year-old Soviet occupation. The people were suppressed as communism does, but the future looked hopeful. I was the last child of our family, my brother and sister being a decade older than I. Back then, I do remember gleeful, happy times. These memories are concealed in the fact that peace would be gone as fast as a flick of a switch. Yes, there were family squabbles, but it was mostly people just clashing with words. Sometimes it got physical. My big brother could easily overpower me if he wanted to vent his anger and show dominance. At the same time, I was so stubborn and wanted revenge, taking battles I knew I would lose. Brotherly disagreements usually revolved around trivial matters, such as who could use my brother's computer. I would like to tell you that he always held back, but that wasn't the case. He had unworked anger issues of his own. There were many times we clashed, but I still remember that one specific occasion which left me with permanent emotional scars. The fists of a young man hitting me, a child, in the face and elsewhere in the heat of an emotional exchange. I tried to retaliate, hopelessly so, screamed at the top of my lungs, and cried endless tears. Next moment I remember, there I was, lying on the kitchen floor, hopelessly beaten, with a bruised body and ego, incomprehensibly muted whining, and face glued to the linoleum floor by the tear cascade. By the time I had wept, which seemed like an eternity, there were no more tears left to cry. No help had arrived, so I had to get myself up. This event alone had a major effect on my development as a growing person. Subconsciously, even as a 7-something-year-old child, I knew I had to take care of myself and could not count on others. My sister played the peacekeeper role. She was the one I got consolation from, and she helped me a lot in general in my formative years, taking me under her wing, showing me the wide world in all of its wonderful colors, in a loving way. She has confessed later that she kept a distance from our apartment, since her home did not feel as harmonious as a home should. My mom took care of our family's physical needs. She cleaned, went to work, cooked food, and stood near us, observing quietly. The thing is, and she has herself admitted it, she was not there mentally for her children. She felt like she was dissociated, living inside a bubble of her mind. Her inner issues overwhelmed her so much that the world outside of her bubble seemed insurmountable. Because of this, she was not able to teach a lot of important life skills that a mother should pass on. My father was the masculine provider for our family. He was constantly working to make money or get food on our table. I still remember that one time being hungry as a child. We were broke. My mom and I were waiting, and then my father rolled in front of our first-story apartment in Siguli. Attached to his car was a trailer. In the trailer there were huge bags of potatoes. I felt so relieved and proud of my father for pulling through at just the nick of time. The only problem was that he was working so much that it was so rare to have him home.
Trauma in motion.
By this point, my father's relationship with my mom had deteriorated to a point where agreement was not on the table from either side. In these times of hardship, a single ray of hope to cling to was what one yearned for. The light seemed to arrive in the form of a couple of Jehovah's Witness missionaries who approached my mother. They swore to bring good news of the future through their godly organization. Due to the recent expansion in Estonia, they were unknown here. As she took their alleged divine words at face value, she seized the opportunity for divine relief. Rather than good expectations, there was more concern. Nowadays, Jehovah's Witnesses are more widely being exposed as a harmful Christian cult. Their leaders exert massive control over every part of their members' lives with a sinister methodology. Much like communism did, they exploited her fragility brought on by hard life circumstances. In time, it drove her and my father apart even further. Also, due to the domestic issues plus the work pressure, my father succumbed to the bottle hardcore. I remember my dad getting drunk, often getting into arguments with my mom, and me bearing witness to it. I do not remember the contents of the conflict, but I do remember wishing they would just stop fighting. Despite being so addicted to alcohol, he credits my birth with helping him break the habit. He was one of the lucky ones, since a great number of people from his age group have passed over or are currently passing directly due to drinking. I am so thankful to my parents for their hard work, so we had food to eat and a place to live in this time of transitional regime. Unfortunately, they did not give much life guidance, since they had unresolved issues of their own, clearly a sign of the times.
The fading hues of the Iron Curtain.
People's hardships, in a nutshell, were a sign of influence of the Iron Curtain society mindset. Shut up, do the work, and don't resist was the motto drilled into folks' heads, still as the fading era echoed on. I am glad to be born post this rule, but the rest of my family is not so lucky. Among my peers are an unbelievably large number of people still affected by their parents' trauma and defective child-rearing ways. In their era, living in the Soviet Union, they did not have any relevant control over their own lives and families. Your home and everything you owned belonged to the state. Food stamps were a necessity to get food, and they were very stingy with the amount you received. How does half a loaf of bread per week sound? You needed connections to get anything else. The handshakes were made under the table, out of the sight of authorities. You had to be careful to know only trustworthy people, since informants were lurking around. If you got caught saying something bad about the authorities, at best you would be sent to labor camps. At worst, you would be put down. Reading pro-communist literature and watching pro-communist television were your only options. History was rewritten to glorify Soviet rulers. Metaphorical fences abound. You could not move on your own. Now think about what I said for a minute. This deep level of control over people's consciousness and bodies has got to have devastating consequences. Always living in isolation and away from free thought. That is why I have immense sympathy for my parents. They were born into conditions where it was hard to know who they are, to grow and to thrive. This kind of trauma gets passed on to the children and the cycle continues.
school arc, the years of wonder.
I remember becoming constantly aware of my body and my surroundings in great detail at around the age of 7. It felt like I was awake, in control of my every single move. This is a trauma response, but this skill remains useful still to this day. Next, school came around. It was in middle school where I started mightily struggling. The mental load provided by the school work alone was a lot. It's just something one has to do, was all I was given. A true rebel at heart, I never bought into much of the teachings. Only a couple of subjects I liked. It was forced onto me, so why should I care? What is the point of studying anyway when I feel so uncomfortable in my skin every day? I just wanted to survive, day by day by day. My only refuge from stress was supposed to be at home, where conditions were unreliable at best. Numerous drastic events had caused the young me to develop what I later found out to be CPTSD. Have you heard of post-traumatic stress disorder? Then C, aka complex PTSD, is that experience repeated, leaving deep scars into my core. I just couldn't let loose. I didn't know how to relax. Being alert was my only choice in school. I remember my peers telling me to calm down and take it easy, but this only made me feel like more of an outsider. My only saving grace at the time was playing with my friends outside and my virtual gaming world. In puberty, my circle of friends started to shrink, while the darker colors of life started to be amplified. Seclusion became an automatic subconscious choice for me. The discovery of porn at a tender age did not help as well. These things in turn set the stage for depression and social anxiety. I was avoiding most social situations involving strangers. This choice in time made me socially inept. I could not keep eye contact, and my body was involuntarily shaking at random times. My breath became shallow, so my sentences sounded like I was choking in the middle of speaking them. This social anxiety was debilitating, and I just thought that I was damaged by design. Venturing outside of my home's four walls seemed more and more pointless. I could stay inside and socialize in World of Warcraft instead. Give me 2 bags of Cheetos and I will be complete, was what I thought. This is how I manufactured comfort in my mind. As much as I enjoyed the gaming life for a while, the sour undertones slowly overtook the sweet taste. I knew I should be out in the real world writing my story instead of playing this virtual one, but the space outside seemed so daunting. Let's just suffer through school and see what will come next, I said to myself.
10 years a slave, I emerge.
Fast forward a decade, and I am being drafted for mandatory military service. One would think that by 23 years old I would have improved my situation. Quite the opposite. In some ways, I felt the worst I had ever felt in my everyday life. I knew how to dissociate my being just enough to stay distant from my emotions, which were mostly negative. They were always there, pressed down, lurking, waiting for the right or wrong moment to bubble up. My mood could turn from neutral to bad, from just random negative thought popping up. Thankfully, my dad, whose house I was still living at, was very patient and let me figure my issues out on my own. Looking back, this was a good thing in the long term. Situation at home was better, but my mental health was clinging to life support due to new unhealthy habits, such as smoking weed, Weekend binge drinking, they worked as a momentary fix, but did not address the elephant in the room, the deep-rooted issues. The thing is, I did not know what this mental health thing was all about. I thought I was just unlucky, created broken from birth, and that we have no control over our life course. While the military service stood against my every belief, it also taught me things. It humbled me. Entering the military service, I was a mentally struggling young man with the ego size of Mount Everest. This belief had no basis in reality, since I had not accomplished anything significant compared to my peers, and that was pissing me off. The strategy of army is to break a person down and then slowly build them up again. I had to strap in and go through another institution's program to turn me into an obedient boy. Just like with school, I dragged my feet through and completed the service. After the service was done, I knew I had to learn to live better. Doing activities for 8 months straight that I hated with my heart, it woke something inside of me. Why am I sharing this? Instead of suffering in silence, we should be capable of openly sharing the full spectrum of our human experiences. As transgenerational trauma keeps marching on, I have shared some of the specific problems of this era. Mental and family issues were taboo and hushed down in my childhood. Luckily, now we have the tools of the internet age. You never know how much your story can help someone until you tell it. Tough experiences can bind us together and give rise to progress as one collective human race. Stay tuned for the next episode.